Hey friends, it's me, the Ebony Otaku, the well-rounded nerd. So I want to dive into one of the shorter chapters from the first Heretic today. Next to the whole thing going on with Fulgrim, because he's an interesting cat. I find Lorgar the Aurelian to be probably my second most favorite Primarch character. Number one favorite is John Grammaticus, and we'll get deep into him eventually. But out of the Primarchs, Fulgrim, because Fulgrim is Fulgrim, and Fulgrim is proud to be Fulgrim. And you know what? I'm with it. And then there's Lorgar the Aurelian. And there's a really interesting chapter out of here we read from the beginning of this book a few weeks back, but now we're going to go a little bit further into the story. Again, I'm never going to read an entire novel on this channel because I want the Black Library to love me. Please don't strike me. I love your books. But I want to jump into the middle of the story because some things start happening. The further you get into the Horus Heresy series and everything that happens pre 40K, the more we explore about the Primarchs and what makes them the way they are. And not only that, but we get to experience the point of view of the loyal Legion Primarchs and the traitor Legion Primarchs. Like I said in my last reading, not all of the traitor Primarchs were traitors for the same reason. There were those who were, butthurt that the Emperor and the War Master are out there, kicking booty and taking names together. And, when they really sit down to think about it, there's hubris and jealousy in their hearts because they feel that the campaigns they have been on are just as great or greater than what the Emperor or Horus have accomplished. There are those who think Horus is better than the Emperor, and he rightfully should take the galaxy from the Emperor because the Emperor is not as hot to trot as the Emperor would have, the peoples believe. And then there are those who just have that exploited human desire in them that chaos finds and says, hey, we're just hanging out being chaotic, come to the chaos side. We will help you entertain whatever is in there that you want to give voice to. What's interesting about Lorgar is his turning from the Emperor and from Terra, from humankind, is a much different path than the rest of the legions. Lorgar and the bearers of the word, or the word bearers, they are unique in that amongst all of the legions, they are openly worshiping the Emperor as God. And why that is significant is because before the Emperor was entombed on the golden throne of Terra, being the great psychic energy that provides a light through the warp, and via the Astronomicon, before that happens, the Emperor is adamant anti-religion. If they conquer a world in the name of Terra and the Emperor and discover there's a religion there, religion has to go. It's not, I wouldn't even call it atheism or agnosticism. It's just no religion. And the reason the Emperor wants it that way is because he is the most long-lived person, probably next to John Grammaticus, and he has seen what religion has done throughout history. As far as we know in the Warhammer universe, the Emperor was around during our time and before our time. He was back there with the ancient Egyptians and beyond. So he has seen through many societies, many iterations of society, what religion has been used for. Yes, I'm always coming from a Judeo-Christian perspective. I'm a Christian. I practice. I love my religion and my faith and my God. But we cannot deny that throughout history, religion has been used as a force for evil in many ways. And that's not unique to any religion. Where people are willing to bend their will to a leader, humans are humans, and humans exploit that. Sometimes it's exploited in the name of profit. Sometimes it's exploited in the name of war. Sometimes it's exploited for really nefarious things that I'm not going to mention here and ruin your day. And that's happened in Christianity. It's happened in Islam. It's happened in Judaism. Even Buddhism. That's a religion of just like, hey, we're chilling. I don't think any of the major religions out there can say, oh, yeah, totally 100%, it's been peaceful all the time. What people will do in the name of religion is it's upsetting. And the emperor has seen that over and over. He lived through the Crusades. You know, the emperor saw women persecuted in Salem as witches when they weren't. Because, you know, if a woman can read or, you know, do science, ooh, she's a witch. The emperor was there when, you know, Hammurabi's law was the only law, and a child stealing a morsel of bread to eat could lose a hand or a finger. He was there for all of that. He was there when people hid behind their particular religions for safety, when they committed atrocities against humanity and children. He saw all of that and said, you know what? We're not doing religion in the Imperium. Not going to do it. There is a faction out there that thinks the emperor always intended to install himself as the god figurehead of the Imperium. I don't know. My personal jury is still out on that. I don't know if he ever truly intended to become God, because he saw so much and that made him so vehemently against it. And I'm not even sure that's to say that the emperor himself didn't believe in God. He has seen enough to know whether there's a creator or not. He knows whether or not there's a creator. He's been alive for 50,000 years or whatever. But having faith in the creator of humankind and using man-made religion practices, precepts to persecute, subjugate, scheme, and scam, those are two different things. And to him, the simplest solution was just no religion. Well, Lorgar wants religion. Lorgar is brought up on a world that worships. They have religion. Remember, all the Primarchs were scattered through chaos, through the warp, and they all ended up on different human worlds and being raised. And each of those worlds are unique. I mean, if you've read enough anime, watched enough Power Rangers, whatever, you know how it is. I mean, like back here's the Sailor Moon, like, oh, you're the red one, you're the fiery one, you're the yellow one, you're the one who is all about love, you're the blue one, you're water. It's that kind of thing. Same principle. They end up on a planet. There are planets that are all about war. There are planets that are all about industry. There are planets where life is really, really hard and you have to fight to maintain. There are planets where easy life is for everybody. So they all end up in one of those major human traits. And Lorgar ends up on a planet where faith is paramount. And when the Emperor comes to his homeworld, you know, they recognize the emperor as being the unnamed god they've always worshipped. When he comes out of the sky with his engines of war, with his Astartes, these warriors, these demigods that are greater than anything the people he was raised with have seen, other than himself being a Primarch. Well, obviously, this emperor dude is the god they intended to worship. But the emperor made it very clear that, yes, I'm welcoming you as one of my sons. You are one of my Primarch lost sons. Come on in to the legions. But he made it very clear that in coming into the legions meant abandoning worship. And that didn't sit right with Lorgar, because his human trait that he clings to is having that desire to worship. He needs someone, something to look up to lavish praise upon. And that's not a bad thing. That's how celebrities happen. We have a need to look up and worship people. If we didn't, celebrities wouldn't exist. Kings and queens wouldn't exist. Empires would not exist. People, for the most part, just have a natural tendency to want to follow whoever is the loudest, most attractive, seems to have the best idea. That's how these things happen. It's not a judgment call, it just simply is. So what that means is Lorgar has to take his worship for the emperor, not necessarily underground, because on his own planet he can do whatever he wants. It's not like other members of the empire are showing up every 10 minutes. But they worship the emperor. They, instead of just worshiping an unnamed god, he has his planet switched to, we worship the god Emperor of Terra. They write scriptures about him. This is where the Lectitio Divinitatis is actually written. Y'all, Warhammer has some words. So if I mispronounce when I'm reading, there's some words in Warhammer that I'm not even sure are actually words. Anyway, I digress. So, Lorgar sets the Emperor up, and in the perfect city on his homeworld called Monarchia, which is what we were introduced to in our first reading from the first Heretic, the perfect city, when they call it a perfect city, I'm not sure there's a place on our version of Earth currently that would compare to it. I've been to a lot of cities around the world, some of the greatest cities on the planet. I would imagine it something like a combination of Shanghai, Tokyo, and Paris, like something like that, where it's big, it's expansive, but everything has its place. Nothing is out of the ordinary. Even the lowest member of society has a place to live, to eat, that well maintained. If you've ever been to a city like Tokyo, where there's umpteen million people, but there's no garbage, it's the weirdest. It's like, because I've been to large cities that I shall not name, where there's garbage everywhere because there's so many people. But you go somewhere like Tokyo, or you go somewhere like Shanghai, or you go to Singapore, and it's a massive city again, and it is spotless, and everything's in order and running the way it's supposed to. It's kind of like, whoa, I didn't know that this was an option for humans to live this way. Again, I got lipstick on my teeth and y'all didn't say nothing. Joking. But that's what Monarchia is. It is probably the only city that could rival what the Emperor has built on Terra in the Himalaysian mountains. It is gorgeous, and all of the edifices have been exchanged out from unnamed god to the Emperor, to the Astartes, to the legions, and children are brought up worshiping the Emperor as God. They are learning scriptures, they are learning chants and prayers. Their entire societal hierarchy is set up in religion, and that's all based on Lorgar's desire to worship. And what makes Lorgar turn from the Emperor is the rejection of his worship. I would almost liken it to a child who has grown up trying to do everything their parents ever wanted them to do in the right way and go beyond what was expected of them. And they make the good grades. They never skipped school. They were always home on time. They made friends with really good people. They always went to their church activities. They dressed modestly. They ate all their vegetables. They were number one in all their classes and in all their sports. They were popular. They did all of their chores. They kept their room clean. They were good to their siblings. They just were the perfect child. And then to get older and find out from those same parents that somehow you still grew up to be a disappointment to them, even though you did everything that was expected of you. I think that's where Lorgar is. And that does happen. There are people whose parents are just not cool to them because the parents aren't cool people. And there's nothing their offspring can do to earn their love and approval. And even though they think they might be doing the right things, it's not what the parents perceive as being the right thing. And their efforts are still rejected. And that has an effect on a person's psyche. It's devastating. It's the kind of thing that these days we, assign pills and go to therapy for. Being real, but you can't give a Primarch a pill. His body will just chew it up, spit it out. Never happened. So he basically has a little bit of psychotic break when the Emperor rejects his worship. They take the worship underground when it's publicly rejected at the Council of Nicaea. When the Emperor basically in front of the other Primarchs was like, Lorgar, stop. And he's like, dude, we had to do this in front of everyone? That's not cool. They took their worship of the Emperor underground, but it didn't stay underground. And the Emperor found out it was still going on, and he had the Ultramarines, Rebutes, Legion, Rebute Gilliman. Isn't that a fun name to say? Rebute. Anyway, I didn't know how to say his name until I listened to one of the Warhammer books audio. And I was like, oh, because I kept saying robot. It's not robot, it's Rebute. Anyway, Rebute, Gilliman, and the Ultramarines destroy Monarchia from the air. They evacuate all the citizens out because they're not trying to kill everyone. Although in the process, as we read earlier, they do kill some who don't want to leave their home, but they're making a statement on behalf of the Emperor, from the Emperor, that heresy of worship of any kind will not be tolerated, not even from a Primarch. And that's where Lorgar breaks. He must worship, he must be approved. And here's the thing about worship. If what we think we want to worship, what we think we want to desire rejects us, we're humans. If we perceive rejection, we'll just find another source for it. And in the world of Warhammer, that source is chaos. The first heretic, Fall to Chaos, by Aaron Dembski Bowden from the Horus Heresy series. We're going to read from chapter 10, The Right to Lead a Legion. Empyrean. Misery. An hour before, Lorgar was leaning on the balcony's railing, looking out over the city. The spire temple of the Covenant offered an unparalleled view of Varadesh, and the Primarch inhaled the scent of spice, flowers, and sand as he watched the sun setting behind the horizon. Magnus stood alongside him, still clad in the coat of blackmail, his coppery skin burnished by occasional sweat trickles. Of the two brothers, Magnus was taller, and even in the years before losing his eye, he scarcely resembled their imperial father. Lorgar was the image of the Emperor in an unknowable younger life. An immortal 30. You have done great things here, Magnus said, also staring out over the vista of Varadesh. The spiraling towers beckoned in sloping walkways like twisted horns, the sea of red-walled homes, the great parks of moon lilies growing in unforgiving soil, ready to be spread over roads and balconies across the city. I have seen Tizca. Lorgar's smile was sincere. And I am always honored you can leave your city of light, yet still praise my people's work here. Magnus chuckled, avalanche low. To think such beauty could rise from riverside sand and bricks of compacted mud. The city of gray flowers is a haven for me, Lorgar. You have melded technology and antiquity with consummate skill. It puts me in mind of those first cities ever raised by mankind. In the deserts they were forced to call home. Lorgar laughed, shaking his head. I've seen no such images in scrolls, brother. Nor have I. The one-eyed king smiled. But in dreams, meditations, in traversing the waves and depths of the great ocean. Lorgar's smile fell a notch. Where his brothers were concerned, Magnus was highest in his affections, not only because he was the first of the family Lorgar had met, but because he was one of the few the word-bearer's lord could relate to. The others were, by varying degrees, feral simpletons, cold-hearted instruments of warfare, or vain-glorious warlords. Except of Horus, of course. It was impossible to hate Horus. He loved Magnus as one of the few he could speak with, but he never believed himself his brother's equal. Magnus's psychic gifts were unrivaled. They'd often spoken of the things Magnus witnessed in his spiritual travels through the infinite, the past, the future, the hearts of mind and men. Kairos, Magnus said, his voice softer now. Alexandron. Balblun. Most of all, for it possessed a great garden of hanging flowers, akin to the ones you see in your city that are worn now, like a crown of silver blossoms. Lorgar felt warmed by the image, the beauties of the past rising again through human inspiration. As I've told you before, he said, it's not my city. I had a hand in it, but I am not solely responsible for the wonders we see here. Always this modesty. Magnus's tone had the slightest edge of disapproval, perhaps hinting at a lecture soon to come. You live your life for others, Lorgar. There is a line when selflessness becomes unhealthy. If all you do is to raise others from ignorance, when is there time for you to learn more of yourself? If all you seek is a greater purpose in existence, where is the joy in your own life? Look to the future, but cherish the present. He nodded to his brother's words, watching the sun set. Even as it darkened in the horizon's clutch, it was still bright enough to pain mortal eyes. Lorgar was untroubled by such human concerns. Another parade, he said, watching a distant street filled with revelers. You sound melancholic, Magnus observed. Your people are pleased you have come home, brother. Doesn't that lift your spirits? In truth, it does, but that's not a parade in my honor. It's for the refugees of Monarchia. I asked for the 7 of them to be brought here after sunset. Judging by the crowd size, I would guess that's the parade in honor of the Blessed Lady. Magnus leaned his huge hands on the balcony railing, as if leaning forward would bring the distant street into sharper focus. Why is one of your refugees treasured above the others? It is the way of things. Lorgar inclined his head to the parade direction. She is the only female, and I am told she possesses great beauty. Couple that with the fact she was the only one to actually witness Monarchia's destruction. The orbital barrage blinded her. Such sacrifices appeal to the masses. Magnus's patrician features hardened. I hear Cor Ferran's calculations in your voice, brother. I have cautioned you before on heeding his words too closely and too often. Bitterness burns within him. Lorgar shook his head. He worries he isn't worthy, that's all, but you're wrong. These refugees are nothing to do with Cor Ferran. I thought, though I confess the Covenant dearly hungers to capitalize on their popularity, I requested their presence here tonight, for I wish to meet them. No more, no less. Magnus was appeased. Silence stretched out between them. As with all close brothers, it was a comfortable quiet, as meaningful and worthy as the words they shared. Only one matter remained raw. How did it come to this? Magnus eventually asked. I know of Colchis' religious war. I remember the day I arrived with Father, and you offered him a world devoted in worship. But we have fallen so far and so fast. How did it come to this? Lorgar didn't meet his brother's eye. He continued to look down upon the city. This whole world burned under a crusade I led almost 2 centuries ago. I dreamed of a god's arrival. I suffered hallucinations, visions, nightmares, and trances. Night after night, sometimes I would wake at dawn to find blood running from my eyes and ears, and our father's face burned into my mind. Of course, I was too young, too naive to realize what I was. How could I know what psychic power boiled within me, seeking release? I was not you. To know from birth how to control my sixth sense, I am not Russ, to be able to howl and have every wolf in the world howl with me. My powers always fired in fits and bursts, coming in feast or famine. I was 8 years old when I realized that some people had pleasant dreams instead of endless nightmares. Nothing could have shocked me more. Magnus remained silent. Despite all their talks, all their closeness, this was a tale he'd not heard from his brother's lips before. Lorgar closed his eyes and continued. I waged a holy war in the name of a father who finally descended from above, saw the oceans of blood and tears shed in his name, and simply didn't care. I wasted my youth hunched over scripture and religious codices, planning for the Messiah's coming, believing he would give me meaning to all human life, meaning that thousands of human cultures are forever sinking. And I was wrong. The Emperor brought meaning, said Magnus, just not the meaning you hoped for. He brought as many questions as he did answers. Father is hollowed through, infested by secrets. I hate that about him. He is a creature incapable of trust. Another pause reached out between them. At last, Lorgar smiled, bleak and unamused. Perhaps he did bring meaning, but he did not bring the meaning humanity needs. That's what matters. Go on, Magnus said. Finish the thought. Since I have crusaded across his empire for over a century, raising icons and faiths in his image, and only now he objects? After 100 years, only now am I told that all I've done is wrong? Magnus kept silent. The doubt he felt shone through his narrowed eye. Magnus! Lorgar smiled as he saw the emotion on his brother's face. Only the truly divine deny their divinity. It is written thus in countless human cultures. He never denied his godhood when he first came to Colchis to take me to the stars. You were there. He witnessed weeks of celebrations in his honor, never once rebuking me for lauding him as a god. And since then, he has watched me crusade for him, never saying a word about what I've done. Only now, at Monarchia, did he bring his wrath, when he decided my faith had to be broken after more than a century. Faith is an ugly word, Magnus said, idly stroking the bound spine of the great book he always carried chained up at his hip. Why were we born to be warriors? Lorgar asked, apropos of nothing. Finally, Magnus laughed. We reached the reason you summoned me to Colchis. Why are we warriors? A fine question with a simple answer. We are warriors because that is what the Emperor, beloved by all, required in the galaxy's reclamation. Of course, But this is the greatest age in mankind's history, and instead of philosophers and visionaries, it is led by warriors. There's something poisonous in that, Magnus. Something rotten. It's not right. Magnus shrugged with a whisper of fine mail. Father is the visionary. He needed generals at his side. Lorgar clenched his teeth. By throne, I am sick to my core of hearing those words. I am not a soldier. I have no wish to be one. I am not a destroyer, Magnus, not like the others. Why do you think I spend so long establishing compliance and creating perfect worlds? In a creation, I am vindicated. In destruction, I am not a soldier. Not a soldier, Lorgar nodded. He looked exhausted. There are greater things in life than excelling at shedding blood. If you're not a soldier, then you have no right to lead a legion, said Magnus. The Astartes are weapons, brother, no craftsmen or architects. They are the fires that raise cities, not the hands that raise them. So we are speaking in hypocrisies today. Lorgar managed a smile. Your 1,000 sons are responsible for much of Tizca's beauty, let alone Prospero's enlightenment. True. Magnus returned the smile, altogether more sincere. And they are responsible for a great number of faultless compliances. The word-bearers, by comparison, are not. Lorgar fell silent. Is this about monarchia? Magnus asked. Everything is about monarchia, Lorgar admitted. It all changed in that moment, brother. The way I see the worlds we conquer, my hopes for the future, everything. I can imagine. Do not patronize me, Lorgar snapped. With the greatest respect, Magnus, you cannot imagine this. Did the Lord of all human life descend upon you, burn your greatest achievements to ash and dust, and then tell you that you, and you alone, were a failure? Did he throw your precious 1,000 sons to the ground and tell you, your entire legion, that every soul wearing their armor was a wasted life? Lorgar, what? I spent decades on Colchis dreaming of the day God himself would arrive and lead humanity to the Empyrean. I raised a religion in his honor for over 100 years. I have spread faith in his name, believing he matched my every dream, every prophecy, every mythic poem about the ascension of humanity. Now I am told my life was a lie, that I have ruined countless civilizations with false faith, and that every one of my brothers who laughed at me for seeking a greater purpose in life was right to laugh at our bloodline's only fool. Brother, calm yourself. No! Lorgar instinctively reached for his crozius that wasn't there, his fingers curled in rage that couldn't be released. No, don't brother me with indulgence in your eyes. You are the wisest of us all, and you see nothing of the truth in this. Then explain it and shackle your temper. I have no desire to be whined at. Or will you strike me as you struck Gilliman? Lorgar hesitated. After a moment, he brushed a white petal from the railing with his golden palm. Anger quieted, without fully fading. As the petal flitted down through the air, he met Magnus's gaze. Forgive me. My color is kindled and my control lacking. You're right. I always am. Magnus smiled. It's a habit. Lorgar looked back out over the city. As for Gilliman, you have no idea how fine it felt to strike him down. His arrogance is unbelievable. We are blessed with many brothers who would benefit from being humbled once in a while. Magnus smiled. But that is for another time. Speak what must be spoken. You are afraid. I am, Lorgar confessed. I fear the Emperor will break the word bearers and break me. We would be cast alongside the brothers we no longer speak of. The silence was hardly comforting. Well, Lorgar asked. He might, the one-eyed giant said. There was talk of it before Monarchia. Did he come to you to ask your thoughts? He did, Magnus admitted. And he went to our brothers. I believe so. Don't ask what sides were taken by whom, for I do not know where most of them stood. Russ was with you, as was Horus. In fact, it was the first time the Wolf King and I have agreed on anything of import. Leman Russ spoke in my favor, Lorgar laughed. Truly, we live in an age of marvels. Magnus didn't share the amusement. His lone eye was deep, arctic blue as it fixed upon Lorgar. He did. The space wolves are a spiritual legion in their own stunted, blind way. Fenris is an unmerciful cradle, and it breeds such things in them. Russ knows that though he lacks the intelligence to give it voice, instead he swore that he'd already lost 2 brothers and had no desire to lose a third. 2 already lost. Lorgar looked back at the city. I still recall how they... Enough, warned Magnus. Honor the oath you took that day. You find it easy to forget the past. None of you ever wished to speak of what was lost. But could you do it again? Lorgar met his brother's eyes. Could you stand with Horus or Fulgrim and never speak my name purely because of a promise? Magnus wouldn't be drawn into this. The word bearers will not walk the same path as the forgotten and the purged. I trust you, Lorgar. Already there's talk that compliance was achieved on 4716 with laudable speed. Settler fleets are en route, are they not? Lorgar ignored the rhetorical question. I need your guidance, Magnus. I need to see the things you see. The gold-skinned Primarch watched the procession weaving through the streets, marching closer by the minute. You know of Colchissian mythology and the pilgrimage to where the gods and mortals meet. You know how it matches the beliefs of so many on other worlds, the Empyrean, the primordial truth, heaven, 10,000 names and 10,000 cultures. It cannot be mere superstition. If shamans and sorcerers on so many worlds share the same beliefs, perhaps Father is wrong. Perhaps the stars hide more secrets. Perhaps they truly do hide the gods themselves. Lorgar, Magnus warned again. He turned from the balcony and moved back to the expansive chamber atop the spire temple. The domed ceiling was glass, offering a breathtaking view of the sky as the night fell. The stars were beginning to make themselves known in pinpricks of light in sapphire sky. Do not hunt for something to worship, Magnus said, merely because your faith was proven false. That's where I'm going to stop that chapter today because Homegirl has other things to do. But I find it so interesting, what they've done in the Warhammer universe. That was not me flipping y'all off. Yeah. Anywho, not editing it out. But this question of faith rejected. Humans have an inborn need to worship, to have faith in something. We can't help ourselves. It's how we were created. And Lorgar believes he found the object of that faith. And looking across the history of humanity, across all the worlds where humanity has expanded over millennia, his perception is if everyone believes there's a God, there's got to be a God. And to me, this guy that shows up acting all like a god has to be that God, right? And at this time, Magnus is trying to warn him, don't take it too far. Magnus is aware that underground, Lorgar is still doing all his worshipful stuff. But the fall is rarely swift. Lorgar's fall, to me, out of all of the Primarchs, is probably the most tragic, because he fell as a son who tried the most to please his father, and all of his work was rejected. And those feelings needed somewhere to go. And they find a place. We're going to get to a point in this book later on. I'm debating if I'm going to read that particular chapter. I probably am. It's kind of like the Meraviglia. It's one of those scenes where it's just like, oh, well, you'll have to mark this 18 and up. Because it's a lot that happens. But when people are rejected, the depths they'll go to, the extents they'll go to fill that void that is left by rejection. And I think the emperor rejected him, not because he was a god pretending he was God or wasn't a god. I think the emperor wanted no hint of danger of religion. He let Lorgar conquer the worlds the way he wanted and raise these edifices because he wanted to see what effect it would have. The emperor is always experimenting. He has a great laboratory under the Himalayan mountains. That's what he does. The Primarchs themselves are experiments that were scattered into the stars. I think he wanted to see what would happen with the experiment of letting Lorgar conquer as he would. And when he saw that religion was having that negative effect, because you don't know. I don't think the emperor knew what the effect of Lorgar bringing religion in would have, after so many years of humanity not having religion. And he probably saw on other worlds that the worlds that Lorgar brought into compliance, that eventually religion became toxic. And there's a lot of ways already that exist in the Imperium of Mankind for humans to have bad lives. And they didn't need the extra one called the oppression of man-made religion. So that's it for this one. If you made it to the end, thank you so much. Please like, comment, subscribe. Y'all know about the contest. Not going to repeat it here. Follow me. Let me know what else you'd like to hear. I'm always looking for new things to read, explore, because you know what? The more we read, the more we explore, the more we learn, and it's exciting. So I hope you're enjoying it. I'm enjoying it, and I will see you in the next one.